Before we get started, we have some extremely important news to share with you.
A message that impacts every single med-surg nurse,
as well as every single nurse.
It's Nurses Week!
Happy Nurses Week!
This is Sam wishing you a happy Nurses Week. I hope this week you take some time and reflect on why you joined this profession and what brings you joy.
This is Marcella, and just remember, when you're driving to work and you're so tired and you just want to go back to sleep, just know that everything you do makes a huge impact on your patients.
This is Kelly. I want to wish you a very special and happy Nurses Week. We're not just nurses. We are a part of an amazing specialty.
This is Sydney, and I just want you to know that you are smart, you are valued, and what you do matters. I hope this week you take some time to feel as awesome as you are, because med-surg nurses are awesome.
This is Mary Tess, and fellow med-surg nurses. You have a superpower. Your medical surgical specialty is the superpower. Use this power each and every day. Happy Nurses Week.
This is Mark Lee, board liaison to the med-surg Moments podcast and a huge fan. This week, find some time to celebrate you.
This is AMSN President Kristi Reguin-Hartman, wishing you a happy Nurses Week. We are the largest nursing specialty profession. You're part of a fantastic group, and I hope you have a great week.
This is Alice Poyss. I am co-founder and first president of AMSN, and I am wishing you a happy Nurses Week. Remember that you are valued. You are the best at what you do at the point of care. Pat yourself on the back, revel in everything that you do, and honor everyone that you work with. Happy Nurses Week.
Looking to take your medical surgical nursing career to the next level?
Spring into savings on high-quality benefits by joining the Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses.
AMSN members receive exclusive discounts on certification fees, education resources, registration to our premier events, and more.
Blossom into the excellent medical surgical nurse you are with AMSN. Join now at www.amsn.org/join.
On this episode of med-surg Moments,
every great movement starts with a moment, a realization that something is missing, and a group of people bold enough to fill that gap. That's exactly how the Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses was born back in 1990.
She's like, I can't believe you did this. You followed me for 2 days, and then you finally picked me up, put me in your car, and took me out to lunch so that I could find somebody that also had the same interest I did. It was amazing. She was so excited. She said, I have always wanted a group for medical surgical nurses, but I never knew what to do. I didn't know what I was doing. Stalking people that I knew or read about, and then running out to them wherever they were and picking them up and throwing them in my car.
this is Mary Tess.
Sam.
Eric.
Marcella.
Kelly.
And Sydney. Welcome to med-surg Moments, the AMSN podcast.
This podcast is an engaging look at the lives of and surrounding medical surgical nurses.
We're proud med-surg nurses just like you, sharing our stories, insights, and experiences to support you in your nursing journey.
Today we have a very special episode and a very important special guest. But before we get started, we'd like to begin by also welcoming back to the show as a guest co-host, AMSN President Kristi Reguin-Hartman.
Hi, Maritas. Hi, everyone. It's so good to be here. I'm so excited for this episode.
Every great movement starts with a moment, a realization that something is missing, and a group of people bold enough to fill that gap. That's exactly how the Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses was born back in 1991.
In this special episode, we'll explore the origin story of AMSN, what sparked its founding, the challenges it faced in those early days, and the vision that turned a grassroots effort into a nationwide force for advocacy, education, and empowerment in med-surg nursing specialty.
Best of all, we're extremely fortunate to have with us today one of AMSN's original co-founders, Dr. Alice Poyss. Since 1992, Alice has worked at Drexel University College of Nursing and Health Professions. She is currently practicing in a primary medical group managing palliative care for elderly homebound patients.
She also served as the very first AMSN president. In 2024, Dr. Poyss was inducted into the inaugural group of fellows of the Academy of med-surg Nurses. Alice, it is truly an inspiration and an honor and a joy and so much fun to have you with us on this very special episode of med-surg Moments.
I am so humbled to be here.
Alice, before we dive into the story of AMSN's founding, our listeners would love to hear more about you and your personal story.
I am a Philadelphia native, born and raised in the city of Philadelphia. Went to school in the city of Philadelphia. I am a diehard Philadelphia Flyers hockey fan. My husband is from Canada, so I am a hockey fan first and an Eagles fan second. My husband dies for the Eagles, even though he's a Canadian. But my father had season tickets to the Philadelphia Eagles at the 50-yard line, which always gave us 4 tickets to the Army-Navy game every year. So we got to see the Army-Navy game, and we got to see the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Philadelphia Eagles stunk. And it's only since we gave up the tickets that they got better. My parents took care of my grandparents growing up. My grandfather was my mother's father. He was a Philadelphia Phillies fanatic. He knew every single statistic for every single player for every year they played, but he never saw a game. Not one time did he ever see a game because he was blind. My grandmother was my father's mother, and my parents took care of her. And after she had her stroke, my father said, "You're the nurse in the family. You take care of her." So my grandmother moved in with my husband and I as newlyweds, and I took care of my grandmother for a long period of time until my father's sister, my aunt, took her into her home on the main line in Philadelphia.
Alice, we are so very anxious to hear the full story of AMSN's founding in your own words as a co-founder who was there each step of the way and the one who answered the call to be AMSN's first president. Tell us the full story.
(1988). Cece and I were office partners at Villanova University. I was chair of the Council on Medical Surgical Nursing, and the ANA wanted to disband the chairs of all of the councils of specialty practice. Medical surgical nursing was considered specialty from the American Nurses Association, and I was the chair of the council when they disbanded it. And I convinced my office partner, Cece Grindle, to join me in an effort to get the American Nurses Association to do something special for medical surgical nurses. I never wanted to be an ICU nurse. I never wanted to be an ER nurse. I only wanted to be a medical surgical nurse. There was no place for me to fit. So that's why I ran for the ANA chair of the Medical Surgical Council. When the American Nurses Association disbanded the councils, I felt lost. Now, the American Nurses Association did not recognize medical surgical nursing as a specialty practice. Cece had just finished her Ph.D. in nursing at the University of Maryland. She had done a survey for the American Nurses Association. So we wrote a letter to Lucille Joel, who was president of ANA, and we said, please, can we use the survey results and analyze what it is that nurses want of the American Nurses Association, especially in specialty practice. And I went around the country for ANA, as did Cece, because she was the chair after me for ANA. And all we heard from nurses is, I work on a floor. You don't work on a floor. You work on a unit. There is no disgrace in working in medical surgical nursing. I am an academic, and the first thing I found when I started teaching undergraduate students at Villanova is nobody wanted to do medical surgical nursing. There was no fanfare. There was no excitement, and there was no money. If you wanted to go to ICU, if you wanted to go to CCU, if you wanted to go to the operating room, or you wanted to go to the emergency room, you got 10 cents more per hour. Why? How could that happen? I am a Penn grad. I am proud to be a Penn grad. And I worked at the Hospital University of Pennsylvania for 12 years as a staff nurse. I didn't want to be an ICU nurse. I did not want to be an ER nurse. I wanted to be a medical surgical nurse. And why did I want that? And that's what I had to promote, what made us special. So in this survey that the American Nurses Association had sent to all registered nurses who were members of the American Nurses Association, so it was over 12,000 members. It's not all medical surgical nurses. It was just members who were members of ANA. So consider that. It's not even a third of the licenses of registered nurses working in this country. 1988, cell phones didn't even exist. And when the data came in and we started to analyze it, we asked a simple question. Is medical surgical nursing a specialty? If you believe that it is, what makes it special? And we asked only a dozen questions. It was a very short survey. When the results came in and the American Nurses Association gave it to Cece because she was the current chair, and we found out that we could use the data. So I said to Cece, we got to do our own organization. We have to do this. This tells us that there is prime information that we can support nurses who are struggling to be happy in medical surgical nursing. I loved being a med-surg nurse. Cece was an oncology nurse, but she understood my passion for why it was important to be able to organize, to divest, to plan for multiple different diseases at the same time. That is a very special gift. And we needed to let nurses know how special that was. So we took our analysis and we had to find somebody that would take us up on our offer. In 1989, we started to search the journals to find out who was looking at specialty organizations. We knew that the Orthopedic Nurses Association had a managing group. We knew that the nephrology group had a managing group. So we went and sought out the group that was managing those groups, and it was Tony Giannetti, the Giannetti Corporation. I had no idea all of the procedures that have to go into creating a new organization. And then we wanted to have a convention, and we wanted to have continuing education credits, and we wanted to have a journal, and we wanted to have a certification exam. And we wanted to have everything that the orthopedic group had, that the nephrology group had, that the woundostomy group had. We wanted all of that for medical surgical nursing. Tony was very patient with us, and he said, let me try this survey. I'm going to send it to a couple different groups. Let's see what we get. So this was 1989. He sent it out to the groups that he managed, just to see the reaction that he would get. We met about 6 months later, the fall of '89, and he said, everybody wants this to happen. He said, you two go in your think tank and figure out what you want to call it. You need a board. You need people. He said, I want you to find someone in the East. I want you to find someone in the West. I want you to find someone in the South. And I want you to find someone in the center of the country. Medical surgical nurses that come from different places in their practice. There are no lists of nurses who work in medical surgical areas. Oh, well, how are we going to find these people? So we started talking to everybody we knew. Do you know someone? Is there somebody you know? I literally followed Sally Russell in Atlantic City for an entire day because she was speaking on kidney failure, renal disease, and looking at the numbers. And I literally stalked her. And at the end of her presentation, asked her to come in my car. It was a Honda wagon with a car seat in the back. And I said, Sally, you're coming with me. I'm going to take you out to eat. And we're going to find something that we can do so that you can give us that topic of information and maybe some people in the country you've met that could be on this board. She's like, I can't believe you did this. You followed me for 2 days. And then you finally picked me up, put me in your car, and took me out to lunch so that I could find somebody that also had the same interest I did. It was amazing. She was so excited. She said, I have always wanted a group for medical surgical nurses, but I never knew what to do. I didn't know what I was doing. Stalking people that I knew or read about, and then running out to them wherever they were and picking them up and throwing them in my car. That's what we did. CC and I went around the country for an entire year. We were teaching undergrads. The dean was not happy with us. Lucille Joel, the president of the American Nurses Association, was not happy with us. But they let us do what we were doing because they couldn't stop the movement. There was so much interest. When we sat down as a first group in the city of Philadelphia, we were able to look at the data from the American Nurses Association as a group, and we could figure out what were medical surgical nurses looking for. They were looking for topics that fit their practice. So what fit their specialty practice? Nutrition, fluid balance, wound care, TPN was part, we put it all in nutrition. CC and I did a group informational research grant that was part of the American Nurses Association on nutrition assessment in the elderly, malnutrition, overnutrition, obesity. We did all of that for the American Nurses Association, and we moved it over into the new group. So when we re-met with the group at the Four Seasons in Philadelphia, Tony said to us and Ron, we have to come up with a name. I pulled out my thesaurus and I said, we have to be above the American Nurses Association. We have to be above that in the alphabet. So I said, look, Academy. We can be Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses because it's a group of learned individuals seeking a common goal. I said, this is perfect for us. So we voted on it, and we thought it was great. When we went back into the room to discuss what the association would be called and what we thought some of our highlight topics would be, we sat with Ron and Tony and we said, okay, this is what it's going to be. Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses. I thought they were going to drop over dead. They were so excited. They're like, this is great. We have never had an association called Academy. And then when I gave the thesaurus definition, they were like, oh, this is great. So what do you want to call your journal? And I said, it has to be med-surg. It has to be med-surg. That's what we do when we're teaching students, undergraduate, in med-surg. That's what NCLEX calls it, med-surg. So we have to be med-surg. He's like, okay, that's a tough sell. But he said, we can do this. And they did. And they started the journal. And the first editor was Marilyn Fetter, also a faculty member from Villanova. Cece was concerned that we needed to be close enough because we didn't know what we were doing, that we could talk to each other. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have Zoom. We didn't have any of what we have today. We were all in one place at Villanova, and it was easy to talk to each other, easy to set up a meeting with one another. We were all there together. The convention loomed large in our mind. We didn't have a planning committee. All we had was us. And Tony said, you have to come up with a convention plan, and you have to come up with topics for the convention, and it has to be done so that we can invite people a year in advance. That was a big task. That was a very big task. I can do a lecture. Cece can do a couple lectures. Sally traveled the country doing lectures, but that's not a convention. Sally Prosniak was from Chicago, and she was a White Sox fan. He had the team sign a ball for her. As soon as she got that ball, we started moving in a very fast progression. We had a big whiteboard in a room at the Chicago Marriott, which is where we had our first convention. And we put all of the topics up and who was going to do what and how much time each person was going to commit. We had to come up with a theme, and we called it Winds of Change, because this was what we believed was going to change the fabric of nursing, the profession of nursing for the future. That medical surgical nurses would feel valued, would feel supported, would feel that there was education only for them to enhance their practice. It was all about enhancing practice, engaging in practice, and moving forward from what they believed was not valued to a high value and move on to a higher level. We didn't know how many people we were going to have. We wanted to include the military, and the military finance ended September 30th. So if we set it for October, they could plan for the next year and set their staff to the convention. Sticking with that date was extremely important because we want our veterans and we want our military to come to every continuing education program that we can have for medical surgical nursing, because they're in the field and they didn't have anybody to go to. The other thing that we wanted to do was to cycle keynote speakers from people who knew members in the association. We wanted to make sure that we always highlighted people in the planning committee that had direct engagement with someone who would offer a lift or boost to the practice of someone who was listening in the audience. That was really important to us. I tagged a lot of the people I knew. I think I tagged Gloria Donnelly like 3 times. She was my dean at Drexel, and she always did a great job. But then we also wanted to have nurses do presentations of what they were doing in clinical practice. So we always wanted something that was new or different. 1990, 91, 92, there was no such thing as quality improvement. So then when we started to do quality improvement, quality efficacy, improving the outcomes of care, the way that things were moving, we had to tap into other avenues. And that's when we started to look at clinical nurse leader and management and leadership, and then doing a leadership track, because that was important if you were looking to do quality projects on your unit. And that was pretty important from the IHI groups and whoever was looking to do any kind of information. We had to vote for who was going to be the first president. It was just the 6 of us. So we did a paper vote. It was a tie. I got tagged as first president, and Cece would be the second president. We didn't have members yet. We didn't know who was coming to convention. If you wanted to come to convention, you became a member. Before that, there were no members. When you think about that, it blows your mind.
I appreciate that you shared the story of the 6 founders, and we have an award we present at convention every year, and it's called the Founders Award for Distinguished Practice, and it is named for those 6 nurses who originated the Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses. And so that's our highest honor, and it goes back to the work, Alice, that you and that team did in that room. And I can't wait to give that award at convention this year. It's going to be so fun and so exciting. And I just thank you for all of that. It's just such an honor to hear this story. I do have one hot take question I want to ask you, though. Something that's been wildly debated in all my time as a volunteer here. Whether or not it's appropriate to say AMSN or AMSN.
That's pretty funny, Kristi, because we just had that debate in the Fellows in Toronto last fall. It was just so funny because the 2 Kathleens are all about AMSN. I am all about AMSN. I am sorry. I didn't realize that there was such a debate until we were in Orlando at one of the previous conventions. And Sally came up to me and she's like, Alice, you can't say AMSN anymore. I'm like, why? It's what we named it. And she's like, no, it's AMSN. It's a declarative, and it should be Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses. I'm like, okay, you were there. I know. I was there. But why can't we just call it AMSN? Well, no, because it sounded something, I forget what Kathleen Reeves told me. It was something that didn't sound quite right. So they wanted it to be AMSN forever. So I said, fine, I'll change my tune. I'll make it AMSN forever.
Well, there it stands.
This is Marcella. I've talked a little bit about being on a journey of kind of reigniting my passion because I was so lost, and really jumping into my membership with AMSN and the med-surg nurses has been such a huge rock for me in realizing that I'm not the pawn that I started to feel like. I've worked 7 years bedside, and I really was feeling like a pawn, kind of frontline, expendable. And then talking to you and the founders and having Kristi on board on this podcast, it's really incredible that we are actually not pawns. We are definitely the queens. We can go wherever we want to. How you described that you were the powerhouse med-surg nurse that all the new nurses ran to. And that was my experience too. The first 3 years I worked as a nurse, I worked on a step down, and I didn't feel like I wanted to go to the ICU, and all my colleagues who were all on that unit they were all under 3 years experience. I did not start with veterans, and that was kind of a weird floating in the air in the chaos. And I did a lateral move to a med-surg unit where I actually met the Chicago president, Cora, and she's the one that told me, join AMSN or AMSN. Now I'm going to have to call it AMSN. And I didn't know that we had such Chicago roots in the story of the founding. That's so awesome. I'm in Chicago, and so it feels really good to have that connection. But what I'm saying is when I made the lateral move to a med-surg unit where I met Cora, and it was 5 nurses that were veterans, and I never had gotten that experience with veteran nurses. And I thought, we're told, oh, you only start in med-surg, but they were working on this unit for 20 plus years. I feel silly now. I used to ask them so much, why are you still here? Why are you still here? But you know what? When I started working with them on night shift, they were the anchors in the storm that I had been searching for my whole first 3 years as a new nurse. They just were the zen in the chaos. I'm a float nurse now in med-surg. I really do feel like the queen on the chessboard. We can go wherever we want. We have so many powers, and definitely not the pawn that I had thought I was before. So I appreciate AMSN so much for really opening my eyes to seeing that I'm already in a specialty. I was feeling lost, not realizing that I did find my specialty. I feel great jumping around as a float pool too. Something new every week. It's like the extreme of the med-surg mantra that we can go anywhere and do anything and be that anchor in the storm. I already feel that I'm becoming that, and I'm learning to appreciate it through you guys. And I'm so thankful that you guys did this for us, that made us feel like the professionals that we are. Thank you so much, Alice.
It's not every nurse in a storm. When you feel valued, it's not where you're at. You're at point of care. It's all about language. And I found early on that med-surg nurses learned early on how to deal with the language of the residents and the physicians. I can't tell you the number of patients that I've taken care of. I know the groups of patients I've taken care of, but overall, every physician I've ever met, it's all about the language. What it is you want, what it is you need for that patient, what it is you'd like to plan for that patient, and then how are you going to take care of that family who has to take care of that patient. And remember, all of it has to do with not you, but the group that you're working with. And it's point of care, not bedside care. And that's how you work now in healthcare, because we learned that about COVID, right?
Absolutely.
It's about the point of care and everybody who's on that team and what you have to do and whose job is it to get that done. And if you have to get a whiteboard up in the nurses' station so you know who's doing what, you can get it done. Even though this is my last year teaching at Drexel, I'm retiring, but I'm still taking care of my patients. And all of my patients still believe I have something to offer them. And if you know that you have something to offer, sell it. And then make sure that whoever you're working for sees your worth so that you get the salary that you deserve. My first year working as a registered nurse in cardiac surgery at the Hospital University of Pennsylvania, I made $5,600. That's it. $5,600 in 1976. That was not enough to do anything. I couldn't pay rent. I had to live at home with my parents. They were not happy about that either. But my father loved listening to my stories. So you have to really let people know what you do, how you do it, and the improved outcome that is achieved. And tie it to the money that the hospital saves. And guess what? You'll get a bonus. I'm serious about that. That's the truth. So think about it.
We sure will. Alice, I think anybody who has been taken care of by you or gets to work with you or learn from you is so incredibly lucky. It has been an honor and pleasure having you on this special episode of med-surg Moments.
Well, thank you. I really love talking about med-surg nursing. You know I do. I have a great story to tell. I think Cece and I didn't know what we were doing, and we walked into something that was wonderful and supportive and valued. And the fact that we can share it now is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Thank you again, Alice, for joining us. This is such an incredible piece of history that we're going to be able to share with our listeners. So thank you so much. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.
We look forward to connecting with you on the next episode of med-surg Moments, the AMSN podcast.
In the meantime, we encourage you to subscribe to med-surg Moments wherever you listen to podcasts.
To reach us, use hashtag med-surg-moments on your social posts.
Or send us an email at amsnpod@amsn.org. That's AMSNPOD@amsn.org.
We are all AMSN members, and if you love med-surg Moments, we invite you to become a member of AMSN. You can learn more at www.amsn.org.
Finally, the content within the med-surg Moments podcast represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of the co-hosts and may not necessarily reflect the views, thoughts, and opinions of the Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses.
Until next time, this is Eric,
Mary Tess,
Sam,
Calais,
Marcella.
And Sydney. And always remember, med-surg Moments is a moment in our lives and a moment in our med-surg careers that makes a huge difference.